As consumers, we are bombarded by it at every turn, like the Incredible Hulk being bombarded by gamma rays. But what makes some media endure, while others are banished to the forgotten black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again? Who or what decides this? Hetero life mates Steve and Yahel want to know, and they want to know now. This is Obscurity Now. And what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Obscurity Now, the show where we take a look at weird and almost forgotten pieces of media and decide whether they should be tossed in the black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again, or remembered for all of humankind. My name is Steve, and with me is a man who, I think I had an intro for you before, but forget it. With me is another co-host, and his name is...
Yahel. I'm here on loan from the virtual border, or whatever.
Oh, the reality border. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
So how's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. I mean, it's as far as actual reality goes, it's going okay. Not getting as much time as I'd like to play the old Oculus Rift, but I'm enjoying digging into all of this virtual reality media that we've been going through here on VR month here on Obscurity Now. If you missed last week's episode, we took a look at VR 5, which is what you thought we were actually VR Troopers at the time.
Yeah, for some reason I confused it with VR Troopers, even though obviously they have completely different names. And I know what VR Troopers is, and I suggested VR 5.
Right.
So...
Right. That was
hi, everyone. I'm an idiot.
that was a Yahel suggest. That's true. But yeah, well, hey, they both have VR in the title. It could happen to anyone. It's okay.
It could.
I don't want you to retire from podcasting just yet. Maybe a few more episodes, then we'll talk about it, and then maybe we'll have your exit interview then.
Somebody to the old podcasters' home.
Right, God, I can only imagine how sad and desolate that place is. But anyway, so yes, as I said, we are here to talk about VR Troopers, another show from the 90s. And I have a feeling that the rest of our VR media is also going to be from the 90s, because VR, in the 90s, it was just hot.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Well... Or the media sure made it seem like it was going to be a big deal, and I think consumers did also think, hey, this is going to be like the next big thing, and
I certainly bought into it, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, and it kind of, I would say today's VR is really good, but it took a while to get there.
Right, I think it's it's more important now, but less of a big deal media-wise. Yeah, less of a hot topic, maybe just because it's been around for so long. The media is just like, we've got more important things to do, like looking at someone's tweets from 10 years ago and canceling them. Yeah, that's it's way more important than like technological advancements in VR. But without further ado, shall we jump into the world of VR Troopers?
Let's do it.
All right.
Welcome to your feature presentation.
All right. Starting off right off the bat with a page from the VR Troopers comic, which is a comic that I know I never read.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, in fact, let's just get right into it. What is your history/memories with VR Troopers?
I don't know if we can trust my memories of VR Troopers, apparently, but as has been established. But I didn't really watch it. This came out in '94, September of '94. I would have been 14, so or 13, just about to turn 14. So maybe I would have been like a little just out of the age group, or starting to age out of that kind of stuff. I did watch like Power Rangers, even though I didn't think it was like super great, but I don't know, there was something entertaining about it. But yeah, I remember the commercials. I remember it was like pretty heavily advertised. But yep, didn't really watch the show.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question as to what you thought about, because it just feels like the transition was from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Power Rangers. And when they showed up, yeah, much like yourself, I was like, this is cool. Kind of reminds me of like Voltron, kind of a live action Voltron, but it's lame and like not as cool as the Ninja Turtles. And plus, like yourself, I was like, am I too old for this? I'm like, but there's martial arts. And I'm just like,
is there?
Yeah, well, something that resembles martial arts.
Yeah. And the footage like looks so like when they use the Japanese footage, which I didn't know as a kid that's what it was, but the footage from the Japanese shows that they've like pilfered this stuff from, like, it looks pretty bad, looks pretty dated.
I'm glad you used the word pilfered, and we're definitely going to get into where and how it was pilfered for VR Troopers. But yeah, as you said, I guess this was VR Troopers was Saban's next cash grab, because Power Rangers was such a huge hit. They wanted to apply the same magic, or I don't know, thievery process of hacking up Japanese shows. More specifically, it's a genre called Henshin Heroes, which means transforming heroes. And so, I mean, obviously, Power Rangers is mostly their footage is taken from Super Sentai, but VR Troopers is taken from 3 shows called it's the Metal Heroes series, and they are Superhuman Machine Metalder, Dimensional Warrior Spielben. It might as well be Spielberg. I mean, why not? And then the last one is Space Sheriff Shader. And I can only imagine that, if we ever run out of shows to watch, those would make for pretty good episodes.
I'm sure when you were researching it, you saw that like these were some of the old like the footage from these Japanese shows was much older than the footage used in the Power Rangers shows for like the
I did not run across that. That's pretty interesting.
Oh, okay. So let me tell you about that then.
Please.
So in particular, the one Space Sheriff Shader, that one is the oldest of the 3, but it aired from 1984 to 1985.
Oh, wow.
So, that helps to explain why the video quality is even worse. Because you even in Power Rangers, you saw a change in the video quality.
Sure.
Whenever they did like the stuff that was taken from the Japanese shows, but man, the difference is stark.
VR Troopers. I agree. Starkly ridiculous, if that works. Have you ever actually, like, what's your thought on like Japanese like rubber suit like genre stuff? Have you ever sat down and watched any of it?
Like, yeah, I've watched a little bit of it. I mean, some of it like looked, and I used to really be into when I was living in Puerto Rico, I used to be into Ultraman.
Oh, I love Ultraman.
So Ultraman wasn't on TV, especially in Puerto Rico, and but there was like a mom and pop video store that they always got these Ultraman videotapes in, and
God bless them. God bless them.
Yeah, I can't remember. I want to say that they were dubbed in English, maybe, but I could be wrong because I honestly don't remember. Maybe they were subtitled, but I remember I loved it, and I mean, I think that stuff's like cool and creative.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I can just only watch so much of it.
Oh,
I guess, like,
sure. It starts to like weigh on the brain after a while.
Yeah, and it's all very similar and derivative, but some of the designs like can be really cool and inventive. So
absolutely. I mean, and of course, it all harkens back to Godzilla, which I mean, I loved watching growing up. And like if you ever watch Godzilla versus Megalon, they have a big sort of multicolored robot in there that looks very similar to Ultraman. And I actually watched, a friend of mine turned me on, like on YouTube, you can check out Kamen Rider, which another Saban show ripped off The Masked Rider. And that one's been going on for quite a while. And there's a really funny one of the series. In order to turn into the Kamen Rider, he's got like this crank on his belt. So
That's so stupid. It's
I mean,
so dumb.
yeah.
I love it.
Like we might just have to look into that for the future. But
I do want to mention we have in the chat Stadium Arts, aka I know him better as Stry, and he was asking what the topic is, and then he knows it was VR, and immediately he went into like the theme song "We Are VR Troopers," which that theme song is catchy as hell. It's not good.
No,
man, it gets in your head.
It is the equivalent of like a cheerleader, like pep rally cheer, like something you'd hear at a football game. Yeah, it's catchy and not nearly as good as the Power Rangers theme. I think that has a lot to do with, who we're going to talk about here in a second. But before we get to that, I think we can probably close the book on the Japanese origins of VR Troopers, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, so for a quick synopsis of VR Troopers, because like the episode synopses on IMDb were, they basically outlined the episodes to a T. Like I wish I should have just read them and then not taken notes.
Not watched.
Yeah, exactly. But here we go. A trio of teenagers gain powers from virtual reality to fight the evil forces of Grimlord. And starting off behind the camera, we have Worth Keeter, a director who I could say is definitely worth his salt. Sorry, I had to. He's actually directed over 20-plus feature films and over 100 TV shows. Among them, of course, are Power Rangers, Big Bad Beetleborgs. I always have a hard time saying that one. And the aforementioned Masked Rider. And basically all these guys just continued working on these these Japanese ripoff shows, I guess, throughout the 90s and even to today. And he was assisted with his directing duties because I guess, VR Troopers was just such a visionary show that they needed more than one director. He was assisted by award-winning composer Shuki Levy, who, as I said, award-winning composer, songwriter, recording, and performing artist. He's garnered over 15 gold and platinum records. He has composed the theme songs to Inspector Gadget, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Spider-Man the Animated Series, X-Men, and he holds the world record for composing the most television theme songs ever. But here we're talking about him as a director. I guess, he composed enough for Saban where he was just like, ooh, I want to get my Tarantino on.
He got the itch.
Yeah. And so then, his boy Saban, threw him a bone, got him...
a Sabone, if you will.
Yeah, Saban.
That's what Saban calls him.
God.
Saban's going to throw you a Sabone, you dig?
That sounds so cancelable. So he directed some Power Rangers episodes, Masked Rider, and then, and this is where it gets really interesting. Up to date, he directed Rusty, A Dog's Tale, which is a TV show. But then his last thing that he directed is a movie, probably direct to streaming or maybe even direct to a DVD called Aussie and Ted's Great Adventure. That's about a dog and starring Dean Cain.
Oh my God!
Yeah, we
Cain and an animal movie. We might have to cover that one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and Stry mentioned in the chat, and I think you mentioned it too about Big Bad Beetleborgs. And I think he was kind of referencing their song. We should probably cover that one too. But it's funny that you're talking about this guy who worked on the theme song because for like all those other shows, because Ron Wasserman, the guy who wrote the theme song for VR Troopers, also apparently composed the song for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It doesn't say that he composed the X-Men song. Obviously, that was the other guy, but I guess he performed. Was like one of the performers of it or something.
Sure.
And the X-Men theme song from the cartoon is all-time classic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know what they were trying to go for with this VR Troopers theme. Because it's not a rap.
It sounds like they didn't finish it.
Yeah, they didn't put any music behind it. They just sort of he was like, hey, look, I've got
a beat.
I've got a catchy chorus. Yeah, with a beat, and that's it. So all right, we got to make our way through this. All right, so writing credits, no big deal. This guy named Douglas Sloan. Again, he's worked on quite a few other like kids TV and cartoons, Barbie's Dreamhouse Adventure, The Boy Who Cried Werewolf TV movie, and what I would love to check out, because I don't think I've ever seen an episode of, RoboCop Alpha Commando, which is a cartoon.
Wow.
And of course, as we said, this is executive produced by Hayam Saban. There, I had to get that in there. So take it away on the cast there, Yahel.
All right, so we're already 20 minutes in, and there's a lot of people in the cast, surprisingly, but I'm only going to cover the 5 main ones.
Sure.
Starting with the VR troopers themselves. We have Sarah Joy Brown. Mm-hmm. She plays, I can't remember her first name. Her last name is Starr.
Caitlin.
She's Caitlin Starr, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
She's like a reporter of some kind of sort.
Yeah.
That's, but also friends with not Michael. Oh my God, what was the guy's name?
Which one, the lead or the side guy? Or
yeah, the lead.
Zach Steele.
Thank you. Anyways, he Ryan Steele, I think is his name. His dad.
Ryan
I think,
Steele. Yeah, Ryan Steele.
Yeah. Anyways, she's friends with him. Their character, Ryan Steele, who's kind of like the lead of the show.
A lot of 100%.
The plot revolves around his dad and like not having seen him for 10 years, and it seems like his dad has been working on this VR stuff this whole time. Anyways, I should mention that Sarah Joy Brown is probably the most prolific of the 3 main VR Troopers actors. She's got a ton of credits, still working on stuff pretty recently over the last few years, lots of TV shows. Brad Hawkins, who played Ryan Steele, he's also been working pretty regularly as well on stuff. He's got a lot of voice acting credits for anime, for like English dubs.
Nice.
But he's also still doing some regular acting. And he actually sounded familiar to me. And once I went through his IMDb, I realized he played Dirk in Attack on Titan.
Nice.
So anyways, and then the final VR trooper, JB, played by Michael Hollander, who after VR Troopers didn't act anymore.
He'd had enough. Well, I don't think he acted in VR Troopers, to be honest with you.
He hasn't started his acting career, some would say. No, but he still is working in the entertainment field, but as a video game animator. And
step up, I'd say.
He's got lots of, maybe lots is, he's got a decent amount of credits here. The weird thing is he started doing that in 2010. So I don't know what he was doing between 1996 and 2010. Maybe
probably a lot of drugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
because of VR Troopers. Yeah.
Yeah, and just looking at some of these credits, it looks like he was working for Telltale games, because these are like almost all Telltale games actually.
Good for him.
So yeah, those games are pretty good. He worked on some Marvel ones, Batman one, the Walking Dead ones. So. Finally, we got 2 people to go. We got Julian Combs, who plays Professor Hart.
Barely plays him.
Yeah, who reads like he cannot wait to take a nap.
Yeah, it was like a eulogy. His lines were like a eulogy, I swear.
Yeah. Anyways, after this, he did no acting until 2008, where he made a cameo. He plays cameo in something called Jelly Scream.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's like a horror B movie or something, like some indie horror B movie. Finally, we've got Gardner Baldwin, who plays the
forgotten Baldwin brother.
Yes. Not really. This guy I thought kind of looked a little bit like William Regal, actually.
Yeah, he did.
But he plays Grimlord, as well as... Well, Grimlord is, I'm sure,
Japanese
when
dude.
We see him in costume, right? It's a Japanese actor, right? But he's all covered in like all kinds of makeup and stuff, so you can't really tell. But he plays the human version of the bad guy, Grimlord, and he is great. I thought he was one of the highlights of the show. Very over the top.
Sure.
He's like petting like an iguana.
Yeah, he monologues to his iguana. I kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and instead of having like an evil cat trope kind of thing, he's got an iguana that he like pets.
I also like that, as we will see once we get to the walkthrough, which we're almost there, that his henchmen just look like sort of sad Euro trash emo girls. They just sort of stand around and look like they're not interested in being there.
They looked like the way that they had. Do you remember the women in? Shoot, now I can't remember the name of the video, but there was a video in the something Palmer.
Oh, Robert Palmer, Addicted to Love. Yeah, they did look like that.
Right, there's like a dozen or so women like dressed in like very similar,
all
like,
the
dresses.
same makeup. Yeah,
the hair
wow,
back, yeah.
I can't believe I didn't think about that. I'm constantly thinking about that video.
Wow. So I suspect that was on purpose by design, because the look is way too similar.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty much the cast. Before we get into it, I do want to touch on some of the things that were happening in September of 1994.
Oh,
when
do
this
tell.
was released, just to get us in the mindset of a pop culturist, a human being living in September of 1994. So in 1994, the World Series was canceled due to a strike of some sort.
Yes, take that, baseball.
I remember not being affected because baseball is terrible. And I don't watch it.
Bravo, sir. Bravo. I agree.
So for the number one song in the country, I'm going to give you a hint, see if you can like name the group. It is an R&B group. So huge R&B group in the 90s. This was not their only song.
Boys to Men.
You got it.
Ah.
It was I'll Make Love to You by Boys to Men. A great song by a great group. The number one movie, I can't really give any clues at all. I'll give it away. So it was Forrest Gump. Was the number one movie in America. Number 3 was Time Cop.
Yes. Man. I loved Time Cop. I'll admit it straight up. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
anytime.
Is that a pun, Steve?
Yeah, you got it. Just in time.
And finally, I tried looking for like the best-selling video game of 1994, but figures back then are very hard to come by, especially when you're going down to the month. So instead, I just picked a game that was released in September 1984. One of my favorite Super Nintendo games, Star Trek: The Next Generation Futures Past. It's a great game. It doesn't count as a Star Trek reference, but I just wanted to bring it up.
You mean it wasn't the VR Troopers game, which I'm sure wasn't even released until like later after the show anyway, but yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm there. I can smell the 90s.
Yeah. I had guessed, and I guess we should have given the chat a chance to guess, but Salt and Pepper he guessed, and for the artist, and Batman Forever, which those aren't like terrible guesses for the 90s.
No, definitely not. That's what I would guess.
Let's get into it.
All right, so we open on a Buddhist temple, or some kind of temple, which our lead, which at the time I didn't know his name, but it's Ryan Steele as a young boy, reminiscing about his time training martial arts with dear old dad. It's all very, I forgot the name of that artist, never mind. He says that he used to come to this temple a lot to think about his dad, and that this day would bring him closer than ever before to finding out what happened to him. And it shows Ryan like sitting there current day, and he's like wearing this motorcycle jacket, and he looks like the kind of biker who's also a youth pastor.
Yes, that's a great way to describe his outfit.
I'm like already, I mean, I'll say that I like that they're starting out with intrigue. We know who the main character is, and we know that he's missing his dad.
Right.
How VR and crazy costumes are going to play into it, that remains to be seen.
Just wait till Saban sprinkles some of his magic. Sprinkle some of them Sabones on you.
That's the greatest. Any other thoughts about the cold open?
No, it was fine. It actually surprised me that they established because it's a kid's show and it's coming from the people who made Power Rangers. So I was actually surprised that they were trying to establish like some character stuff right off the bat. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say overall, the tone, at least in the first episode, is surprisingly, kind of serious. It's not until we're introduced to the quote unquote comic relief in the second episode, but we'll get there. All right, so cut to a karate dojo where a tournament is being held. I wrote down awful choreography.
Terrible. Throwing kicks when the guy's nowhere near him.
Right.
Their opponent's nowhere near him.
It's like first level like indie wrestling or something.
Yeah. I mean, I know why they did it that way, because they didn't use a stunt person for the lead actor, because the lead actor, Brian Steele's in the tournament fighting. That's who we see in. So that's why those kicks are like super far away.
Right.
The only thing that he does that's kind of like, you could say is like in the fight or whatever, is he ducks a kick that was thrown so high it would never have hit him anyway.
And this sort of dawned on me when I was watching this, like, at least they established like why the VR troopers know martial arts. Did they ever explain why the Power Rangers knew martial arts, or did they just acquire that with their abilities? Or am I just thinking too much about it?
I don't remember if they ever explained it. I feel like they didn't. I do remember one of the Rangers was like a gymnast, and one was, if I'm not mistaken, and one was a martial artist. I think the Yellow Ranger, maybe.
Of course, because she's Asian, right?
Right. I mean, I know. Let's face it. I mean,
those were the days.
That's one of Saban's favorite Sabones.
Boy, you're really gonna grind that one down.
Yep.
All right. Anyway.
So we see Ryan Steele fight in the tournament. Then we see he wins. JB fights. He wins.
I like how they're all gracious winners, which is the way the heroes who are leading a kid's show should be. We're introduced to their teacher, Tao. He says he's very proud of his two students. And then a dog shows up for no reason, and then Ryan pets it. Obviously, the dog is there for, I guess, little kids or whatever to go, oh, there's a dog on the screen. And all of it at this point really feels like an after-school special with no drugs, at least to me. Cut to, and I put a newspaper, because I was really kind of confused about what it was at first. And then what looks like a sea captain sitting behind a desk who's very cartoonily answering a phone. And then we're introduced to our supporting actress, Caitlin. He screams for her and says that some guy, I mean, at the time, we don't know who he is, Zichter, who ends up being the series villain, is demolishing a historical building and sends her on assignment downtown to cover it. And Caitlin asks for him to call Ryan and JD to come along. I'm sorry, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, it was about the dog, but I'm sure we're going to get to it. So
yeah, we will. This begs the question to me is do Ryan and JD just assist Caitlin, or are they on the payroll as well? I don't know. Again, maybe it's just an excuse for have them to go do stuff, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much.
So cut to Ryan and JD, and this was great. This is like obligatory cool guy motorcycle. First they're just in the attire, then they get on motorcycles, and we see them drive down to where the protest is going on. And they really wanted us to know, whatever his name is, the director, Worth Johnson or whatever it is, they really wanted us to know that JD and Ryan are cool guys by filming them riding these bikes. They are
cool dudes.
Yeah, they arrive and the tamest, most boring protest in the world is going on. Caitlin asks, what gives Zichter the right to do something like this anyway? And of course, the answer in the real world is that, he's rich and he probably owns the land and he can blow up whatever he wants. But
he's obviously bought whatever, because he mentions later in the show, that he found some other building to buy or something.
Right.
But here's what's weird. So their whole thing for protesting this is that, we can't let Zichter do this to our town and ruin it, blah, blah, blah. But what he's demolishing is like a corporate building. It's not like he's tearing down a park or a neighborhood.
I mean,
so he's just gonna put up a different building. What's the?
I mean, it's stock footage of what I thought was a a Las Vegas casino. I wasn't sure what it was, but yeah, it was hilarious. Stock footage that you never see any of the protesters anywhere near. And I wrote down here, at this point, Ryan looks like Billy Idol if he never did heroin and only listened to Nickelback. And then we're finally introduced to Carl Zichter. He's laughing maniacally, as he should, at his iguana named Juliet. while his harem of drugged out, well, I'll just skip over that word, emo girls just stand around behind him. I didn't realize that they're going to transform later at this point. And he then signals the launch or the detonation of this stock footage. And we're treated to find stock footage of what looks like a Vegas casino blowing up. The crowd barely reacts. It's hilarious how no one reacts. It's so hilarious. Yeah. Worth Johnson really blew it with his ability to direct extras. Zichter tells his emo girls to return to virtual reality and await further instructions. They first transform, really for no reason other than to show us that they can transform into their true form, which is these weird black cloak. Their bodies are all cloaked in black, and they have these weird gold helmets. I guess just sort of typical henchman kind of gear. And
I think it's just to establish like who those people are when we see them later.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. And Zichter monologues to his iguana and to himself, saying how in the end the world will be his, typical villain stuff. He says no one can stop him now. And then we cut back to the dojo where our heroes are. And they're kind of cleaning up. JD is sitting at a computer. He's checking the books. And there's a massive PC in there. And it dies and then starts shaking. And then a man's face appears on the monitor. And it's Professor Horatio Hart. And he says, "Greetings from virtual reality." He tells Ryan he has to come to his lab because he has a message from his father.
Steve, he didn't say it with that much emotion.
You're right. I'm trying to move it along. Yeah.
Virtual reality.
Right. Yeah. In the most boring possible. I really wonder how this guy got the job, but I imagine a lot of the people in front of the camera were probably willing to work for pretty cheap in order to get this job.
Yeah.
And, so Ryan looks at Caitlin and JD with all the experience of his 10 sessions of acting school and very undramatically says, "His father, my dad's been missing for 10 years. So we're back at Zichter's lair. One of his henchwomen tells him that the professor has contacted Ryan Steele. They leave, and Zichter turns into his real form by saying, "Forces of darkness, empower me. Take me back to virtual reality." And so he transforms into his sort of, I don't know. How would you describe how he looks in his regular form?
I don't know. It's kind of...
It almost looks kind of like Darkseid or Darkseid from DC, kind of. Like a really cheap version, Kmart version.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to describe it. He's got like this weird helmet. I mean, the makeup looks surprisingly decent for the time, especially when you think, this is from the 80s, the footage of the makeup person. So yeah, it's okay.
So now we're in the quote unquote, I guess, virtual world. And they're all with his like legion of rubber suit Japanese style monsters, and we're treated to a full roll call, which I did not write down all these names.
Good. I don't want you to go over them. There were a lot.
Yeah, there were. And this is where we find out that Zichter is called Grimlord and wants to be master of all realities, and he's been amassing an army. Wow, there are a lot. And meanwhile, our heroes are driving in the most boring, basic Mazda like you've ever seen. It's like they could spring for like a Ford Taurus or like anything.
Yeah, it was like was it a Mazda? It basically, it's like a little red hatchback. It looks like a Ford Fiesta kind of, but like whatever Mazda's version of it is.
It reminds me of your old Focus.
Fuck you, Steve.
hey, bless that car. It got us through some hard times.
That's very true. Very true.
Zach says that his dad was close to a major scientific breakthrough when his dad disappeared. And then two of the Japanese monsters appear. One guy named Air Striker, who's like a helicopter. And then did you catch the land guy's name?
No.
All right, it doesn't matter. And then they leave. They run out of the car and go into the woods because that's a good idea. I mean, I guess they could hide, I suppose. They see a bridge, and for some reason, they're really impressed by it. And then the bad guys destroy the bridge. Now the heroes are wandering around the forest until they find a weird temple thing, and they automatically assume it's a portal. and the portal says, "Please enter the portal." So they do, which is the dumbest.
Well, the Professor Hart's voice.
Right.
Yeah, says something like, I think, right? It says like to enter the portal, but
I thought it was
no reason for them.
Are you sure it's not a different voice? I thought it was like a woman's voice, like your typical computer woman voice. Like,
maybe you're right. Whatever, a voice tells them, right?
Sure,
to go in there. And the portal's just like an upside down V. Like, so why would you think it's a portal? Like, it doesn't really look like a portal. It just looks like two metal beams, like, you know, meeting at the top. So
the cheapest possible portal they could make.
So,
Kate, all right, they go into the lab, and it's your typical looking run-of-the-mill, like, sort of B-movie lab. And Caitlin tells Jeb the dog not to touch anything. Which is so stupid. Professor Hart starts talking to them, Max Headroom style, tells them to put on their VR visors. And finally, I got excited. Although, God, these are the, like, cheesiest looking visors. They look like they're made out of candy. They're like purple or something. They're not the big black ones from Lawnmower Man, which, of course, is the industry standard for VR visors.
Right. But you know, that's a film budget, Steve.
Exactly. So Zach sees his dad in the VR world, and for some reason I guess Zach tries to emote here and does a poor job, I guess, in relation to his dad. Zach's dad tells him about Grimlord and asks them to become VR troopers, and Zach has a hilariously bad dramatic moment with his VR dad. Okay, I just said that. They are then given these little crystal thingies called transformative visualizers that allows them to transform into their, VR trooper counterparts. And that, God, that really killed it for me. If they can't use the VR headset to turn into their like VR trooper counterparts, why are they called VR troopers?
Well, why do they even have those VR? I mean, maybe they use them like in later episodes or something. But I don't get it either.
Well, the reason why is because VR was that we're supposed to save that to the end. But but that's the thing, like about VR in the 90s in media. Like whenever it was used in media, it was like they would tell you, okay, this is about VR, but then when they show you the VR stuff, it's nothing like the way VR really was. So like, real weird. Yeah. So then we get a shot of the villains, and they send out another attack. The professor tells Zach all he has to say to transform. Why didn't I write it down? Is their stupid little catchphrase, and then they do just that. We're then treated to the typical Japanese rubber suit Ultraman versus monster style fight scene, which is
and their catchphrase to transform is pretty lame. It's just like VR troopers transform, right?
Trooper transform. That's all it is. Yeah.
Trooper transform. Yeah.
How could I forget
Whereas
that?
Grimlord is pretty cool. Yeah. I thought like his like little like powers of darkness empower me, take me back to my virtual reality. Like, it's got like a nice little cadence to it.
Yeah, this is definitely a case of like the villain being cooler than the protagonist for sure. JD and Kate. So all right. Ryan actually ends up getting injured during the fight. But you don't really see it. JD and Caitlin show up in the lab, and they're like, "Where's Zach? We just left him back there." And they go on to the computer, their Pentium, and try to find him. And then they do, and he's just laying on the dirt. And then that's the end of episode 1. Ooh, cliffhanger.
So Steve, did you know why they were split up during that fight?
I don't remember. Why don't you refresh my memory?
Basically because, 3 different shows were used to pull footage for the Japanese footage, and all the fighting stuff is obviously when they're in costume is from the Japanese shows. Well, Ryan's alter ego is from one show. JB and Caitlin's are from another. So they're 2 different shows. And so this is a real common thing where in VR Troopers, there's always like some kind of like plot-driven reason why they have to be separated when fighting, or and they never ever all 3 take down like a bad guy together.
Right.
It's always like either JB or Ryan individually taking one out, Caitlin never, for whatever reason, they must have not had any footage of her character taking one out. But so that's why. So
kind of makes
they always get separated.
Yeah.
And I was reading that like basically then like they'll have like their fight, and then they like meet up in the human form with their missing comrades and then ask them how the fight went. Like that's like a real common thing.
What's the point of being a team if you can't even work together? But
yeah.
Hey,
now later on they did end up having to film some American like original footage of them in the costumes because they were running out of footage.
Right.
So there is like one time where they fight together, but that's it.
Yeah. I have to say, like, as far as Henshin heroes go, I don't even really care for the design of the VR troopers, especially
Forgettable.
Zach. Like, I really hate how, like, half of him is blue and the other half is red. But I don't know. I don't like when heroes are, well, I guess not all the time, but sometimes asymmetrical designs really get my goat. But anyway, that's interesting fact. Thank you for that. So jumping into episode 2 here, because we weren't going to leave you guys hanging with just one episode of VR Troopers here. So episode opens with Ryan once again, remember, training with his dad. And then we're back in the lab with JB and Caitlin trying to find Ryan. And then out of nowhere, the professor makes this generator to revive Ryan's batteries or whatever. So then Caitlin and JB...
And also heals his injuries.
Right. Well, that comes later because they have to bring him to the lab to do that. It's a two-part process. Yeah. Caitlin and JB take the VR Mazda to find Ryan. And while they do, JB and Ryan start freaking out because... No, not Ryan. JB and Caitlin start freaking out because the car starts just driving on its own. And
she can't control it. The brakes don't work. She can't steer it. Yada yada.
It magically,
it's going off a cliff, Steve.
Yeah, it's going off a cliff, and then whoa, it turns into a flying car. And then this douchebag professor comes on and goes, "I put in a few modifications while you weren't looking." It's like he waited till then to tell him, like. They were over there hyperventilating. Like, what if, like, one of them was just like, I can't live with myself, and just jumped out of the car. And,
and this scene is awful because, like, Caitlin and JB are freaking out, but the dog is in the back seat, calm as fuck.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Well, he's just so cool. Jeb, the dog, is just so cool. And he gets even cooler here in just a few scenes.
Yeah. I didn't like his governor run too much, though, or his presidential bid either.
Whoa, that's a deep cut. Yeah, the governor of Florida, right? At one point?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So now
Florida. No, it was Florida.
Now we're back at
where I live.
Yeah. Zector Industries. Zector sits around with his harem of emo hench women, and he tells us he has plans to take down all 3 VR troopers at the same time. Then we're back in the flying car. It lands, and JB and Caitlin find Zach. They use the generator thing to, I guess, partly heal him, but not before. I guess the proper name of the henchmen, once they transform, is Scuds. They show up, and JB and Caitlin have a fight with them. And then they find out that if they touch the 2 Scuds together, they disintegrate. Like, that is the lamest thing to have, like, a henchman to do. Like, that just negates the reason to fight. You just have to push him then. Like, it's like, let's not have any fight scenes at all. But anyway, so we're back in the lab. Professor uses some machines to further heal Ryan. Now we're back at Zector Industries. Zector talks to his iguana. He says the name of the game is I Win. And then we're back at the lab. Our heroes put on their VR visors. Oh, thank God. So they can see their enemies. And then the way they set this up, like, this is, all right. One of the basics of screenwriting is to have, like, setups and payoff. So, when they first entered the lab, they could have, like, pointed at this machine, like, ahead of time and been like, hey, look at that crazy machine over there. Like, I'm not exactly sure what it'll do if somebody, like, does something. And then, they go off and do some stuff, and then later somebody messes with it and something happens. Well, the way it works here in VR Troopers is they point at the machine. The professor goes, I don't know what will happen if somebody messes with that machine. Jeb, the dog, what does he do to the machine? I don't know. He presses a button or something. I don't even remember. Basically, he turns himself into a talking dog who sounds like Jack Nicholson. and then what did they put? He promises never to let anyone. Oh yeah, and then they basically are like, hey, can you please promise never to let anyone else know that you can talk? And he agrees. And this is our comedic relief for VR Troopers, a talking dog.
Yeah. And I know I read that later on, Jeb and the dog and Ryan switch bodies, and Jeb has to fight as Ryan, in Ryan's body. He has to fight some monsters too. And there's another episode where Jeb gets mutated by Grimlord, mutates Jeb into a dog monster that's only loyal to Grimlord, and he's ordered to go on a rampage by releasing animals from zoos. And then Ryan uses a virtual canine to bring Jeb back to his senses.
VR canine. Well,
yeah.
I haven't seen that before. I kind of wish we would have watched that episode. But I'm definitely getting shades of Andy the Talking Hedgehog here.
For sure.
Anyway, back at the dojo, there's a training montage. Tao, their sensei, tells them to clean the dojo before they leave, which I guess is supposed to be kind of like a comedic button on that scene, and it really wasn't that funny, and the whole scene itself was kind of pointless. I think it was just filler. Now we're back at the newspaper. Caitlin talks to her boss, tells him she'll have a story ready by tomorrow. She takes a camera with her. I think the whole point of that scene was to show how she got a camera. She drives.
Yes.
She drives.
And she's just clicking that button just repeatedly clicking the picture.
Right. She drives the VR Mazda in the middle of nowhere and starts taking pics of all the villains walking in a desert. And now we're in the back in the dojo, and I put down nice printer because they're printing out something, and for some reason there's a close-up of it, I guess. Caitlin tells Zach and JD about, I guess it's the defensive. I think I may have left out a scene where Grimlord says he's going to do a massive attack on, the VR barrier. That's the reality barrier on Earth. And it's so funny because, it shows all these, villains and Japanese rubber suit characters, and they're all lining up to battle against something. You never get to see the other side. And then actually in the next scene, they start attacking something, and you never get to see what it is. So now, back at the newspaper, the gang tries to contact the professor using a floppy disk.
And it works somehow.
And then they have to scan in pictures using something that's obviously not a scanner. And they go into the dark room, and then they transform into the VR Troopers. And then I wrote here, God, the professor seems so bored. Ryan in VR form pilots some weird jet for a while, which you'd think they would have saved that for later. But he starts right up. But I guess that goes back to what you were saying about
toys, baby.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, they still could have done it later, but I guess it goes back to what you were saying about they always have to be separated.
Right.
While JD and Caitlin go and search for Grimlord's base, but they're attacked by Scuds. Ryan then uses a tank to fight other little tanks. Then he starts running out of power. Professor tells Ryan he needs to disable General Ibar's tank and the other tanks will be useless, so they have a tank battle, and of course, Ryan Steele wins. He always wins, especially in bed. That's why he's Ryan Steele. Professor says, good job, Ryan. Back at the lab, Professor says, job well done. Grimlord interrupts and says, you may have won the battle, but I will win the war. Super original. Ryan says, I have a feeling it's going to be a long fight. Then it shows Ryan back at the temple, staring longingly out in the horizon, thinking about his dad. And that is the end of parts 1 and 2 of VR Troopers.
You know what's really messed up is that Ryan, when he like gets that virtual message, because it's just like a video message of his dad and his dad convincing him to become a VR trooper. He asks before he realizes it's a message. He thought it was live. He asks, "Are you still alive?" Professor Hart doesn't tell him if he's alive or not. His dad's message doesn't say if he's alive. He's not even asking anymore if he's alive. And obviously I get that we're like gonna find that out later, but you would think, because that's such a big plot point,
You
right?
never ask. That's
think,
right.
Like the professor would have been like, "Oh, I don't know. Your dad is, gone somewhere else." Like they never explain it.
I don't know if he's alive. I've been too bored to ask.
Maybe like say Grimlord took him, and I don't know if he's alive. Like anything,
right.
But yeah. Anyways.
All right, so let's run this bumper and put a bow on this puppy.
Remembered or obliterated? That's the question.
So, Yahel Velasquez. Do you think the VR troopers should be remembered for all of time, or should it be tossed into the black hole of obscurity and to the virtual black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again?
This was not good for me. Maybe it's because I don't have any nostalgia for it like I do Power Rangers. But it was both, in some ways it was better than Power Rangers as far as like establishing some character stuff and some motivations and that kind of a thing. But it was also worse in other ways. Like maybe like not as charming, not as endearing. And I don't know, maybe Saban didn't put in the right Sabones in this soup, but it's a no for me.
That's a t-shirt, man. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I think because I was definitely comparing it to Power Rangers and trying to figure out why Power Rangers works and like this one doesn't. Like despite the fact that like I feel like I liked that there was a slightly more serious tone, because like, I mean, the Power Rangers, they were never searching for a loved one or anything like that. They were just Power Rangers because they were told they were supposed to be. But there aren't enough VR troopers to like choose from. Like there were 5 Power Rangers to choose from. Like, so you could pick your favorite one. It's like you've got. But you've got 3 VR troopers, and they're all pretty characterless.
Generic.
Yeah, pretty boring.
Yeah, very bland.
And then you've got a talking dog. I mean, and that's just like... that's like your last bastion of like trying to get attention is when you throw a talking animal.
Yeah, that's weird because that's something that you would think they would introduce later when they're getting a little desperate for ratings,
right? Like in
something.
season 6, yeah, like
right,
like that kazoo guy in the Flintstones or Poochie in the Simpsons. So yeah, we're definitely gonna toss this one into the black hole. Here we go.
The heathens have spoken. You are obliterated.
Yeah, so I don't even know if anyone would like shed a tear about that. I've never heard of like of sort of like a cult of like people who are really into like VR troopers. Like, I'm sure if I know one guy in particular who would be quite upset if we trash the Power Rangers, but they're too popular to have on this show anyway. I
mean, well, the show was on for like 2 years. I did find like quite a surprising amount of like VR Troopers cosplay pictures.
Right. There were a couple of them in the slideshow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did see that like VR Troopers, like the cast, like does conventions pretty regularly, which that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? Because everybody doesn't.
Sure.
But they're doing like some pretty big ones, like Anime NYC and LA Comic Con and that kind of stuff. So,
hey, good for them. I don't. I don't fault them. Like. One of these days we'll get to do one. We'll be right. We'll be right next to like all the people we've shat on over the years. They're like, "Hey, you're that podcast that threw us in the dark pit of obscurity. Let's get him." I can't wait for that day.
That would be great.
Yeah, and we'll have to have our martial arts skills in peak performance.
That's right. Yes.
Any projects to report before we sign off here?
Nope, still working on the same secret project and the redoing the Game Boy camera. And yeah, I did hit 99,000 subscribers, so that's exciting.
Dang, that's awesome.
Getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm actually at 99,200, almost 99.3.
Yep.
Thousand.
If you look closely, you can see me with a funnel and a hose trying to siphon some of those subscribers off to this channel.
I wish that they would come over. I mean, they just keep liking the tweets. Not showing
It's all right. It takes time.
Yeah. It's a marathon, not a
sprint. Yeah. Oh, I've been forgetting to mention for a few times here, or for a few episodes here, that I resurrected one of my old podcasts. The first one, really, Theme Park Legends. I had another interview a few weeks ago. For a guy who recently parted ways with Universal Studios. So if you're interested in some behind-the-scenes stuff about working in a theme park, I will post a link to that in the description. And also, I was recently interviewed about my audio drama, Ray Can't Sleep, on the first episode of podcast. And that was a really fun interview. And also, Ray Can't Sleep is at 11K downloads. Just throwing it out there.
Nice.
Yeah. I wish there was a way I could make those people come over here as well. All in time. But other than that, we will see you next week, where we will be taking a look at. Do you remember?
What was that? That Johnny Quest?
The Real Adventures
VR?
of Johnny Quest.
The Real Adventures of
which
Johnny
doesn't
Quest.
have
Yes,
VR in
you.
the title, but it's featured quite prominently. So yes, we'll see you next week on yet another episode of Obscurity Now. Take care.
You've been enjoying Obscurity Now, a podcast that's recorded live to tape and streamed to Twitch and YouTube. Subscribe so you never miss an episode or hilarious quip. Take us with you by following the download links provided in the show notes to wherever you get podcasts. And take notice of our various social media links, if that's what you're into. I'm not here to judge. And make sure you join us live next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, as we continue to discuss more obscure media only on Obscurity Now.